I'd been driving the interstates for 20 years, through storms, wildfires, and nights so empty you could hear your own pulse. But nothing. Nothing prepared me for the voice that came through my CB that night. It wasn't human. It wasn't even alive. It said my full name, down to the middle initial, and told me to pull over before the bridge. I should have ignored it. God knows I should have kept the wheels rolling. But 5 miles later, that bridge collapsed, and every driver who crossed before me was gone. Now I can't sleep, because the voice still knows where I am. And if I don't tell this story, you might hear it next. Stick around, hit that like button, subscribe, and listen to the full story before you turn your ignition tonight. Because once you do, there's no turning it off. Cole Bennett had driven long enough to tell when a highway was holding its breath. On a damp November night, Interstate 40 lay quiet and slick between Little Rock and the Oklahoma line, a ribbon of black glass threaded through pine and pasture. His tractor hummed like a tame animal. The trailer held wooden crates, sealed and stamped with a tidy logo that read, Vector Civil, Equipment. The manifest was clean, the signatures stacked, the delivery clock tight. Drop in Oklahoma City by noon. Turn south for San Angelo by dusk. Sleep somewhere with a hot shower and a cheap omelet. That was the shape of his life. Lines on a screen, lines painted on a road. The cab smelled like diesel and old coffee. A St. Christopher medallion swung from the visor on a nylon cord, tapping the plastic with a soft, patient clink whenever the crosswind nudged the rig. Ramblin' steel guitar ballads warbled out of the AM talker, made mushy by weather rolling in from the plains. The CB crackled now and then. One lonely cattle hauler up ahead, warning about a speed trap near Alma. A bored night owl asking if anyone had seen the Aurora spill as far south as Missouri last week. Cole sipped from a dented thermos, grimaced at the bitter heat, and watched pale fence posts flash by like the ticks of a metronome. On the dash, the clock showed something close to 2 in the morning. No numbers, just a feeling. That stalled hour when human voices thin out and the road belongs to animals and ghosts. Cole didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in tire wear, in torque curves, in keeping his CDL unblemished. He believed in keeping the rig moving unless something honest and heavy told him to stop. The CB popped so hard it sounded like a paper bag bursting. Then a voice poured into the cab, warm, gravelly, familiar, in a way that knocked the wind out of him. "Cole," it said, "do not pull over. If you stop, you die." He stared at the speaker, as if it had grown teeth. The voice wasn't close to his. It was his cadence, his lazy Arkansas vowels stretched thin by highway years. The exact weary shrug he heard when he argued with himself about one more cup of coffee or one more hour behind the wheel. He felt his scalp lift and go cold. He reached for the mic out of reflex, then let his hand hover there. The median flashed open to show a dark farm road. Pines hunched in the drizzle like wet cattle. He had heard every kind of midnight story at truck stops from Cheyenne to Corpus. Phantom headlights, hellhounds, radio bleed that made a rookie swear a dead uncle was jerking the wheel. He had never heard his own voice tell him he was about to die. "Breaker," he said at last, pressing the transmit. "Whoever's running voice spoof tonight, you picked the wrong truck. State law frowns on playing chicken with a carrier." Static hissed. The convoy far off muttered about weather. Then the voice came back, a notch lower, carrying an echo like it had been recorded inside a grain elevator. "Cole Bennett," it said, using the whole name the way only parents and cops did. "You are hauling something that cannot cross the city line. If you deliver, people get hurt." His right boot eased off the throttle. The big Detroit diesel sighed, grateful. The rig's weight held steady behind him like a trained draft horse. He squinted into the mirror because one part of his brain, the practical part, had already slid away from the spooky and was making a checklist. Look, measure, verify. There, a pair of headlights far back in the broken rain. No markers, no top bar, something tall and glossy that ate light instead of throwing it. It neither gained nor fell away. It did not pass when the interstate opened to 3 lanes. It held him like a fisherman paying out just enough line to let a base run. Back on the CB, the copy of his voice said, "Take the next exit. County Road. Keep rolling. I'll tell you where to stop." "Who is this?" Cole asked. "Name and badge if you're selling law. Company and dock number if you're selling help." "Cole," the voice said, almost gently. "You really want to trust a name on the radio at 2 in the morning?" Rain scrolled across the windshield in blade-thin lines. The wipers smeared them into a single gray veil. Up ahead, a green sign loomed and slid past. An exit named for a town with fewer people than a football roster. The black SUV, if that's what it was, blinked its brights once, a white-lashed wink that rushed his pulse in a way no story ever had. Cole tightened his grip on the wheel until tendons rose on the backs of his hands like ropes. He had promised himself a long time ago, back when his son still drew trucks for him in crayon, that he would never let fear alone make his choices. Fear was useful. Fear kept you from playing chicken with a storm front. But fear had a way of dressing up other people's needs as your own. He took the exit anyway. The county road was a pale tongue laid down between winter fields. Gravel hissed under the tires. The big rig moved like a ship shouldering through shoal water. The SUV came along behind him without hurry, lights low, badgeless face unreadable. Cole killed his marker lights and dimmed the dash till the gauges were coals in a cold grate. The tractor's heartbeat, that steady 800 RPM thrum, sounded louder in the stripped-down dark. "Right in a quarter mile," the not his voice said. "Then down past the cottonwood and the culvert. You'll see a glow." "Of what?" Cole asked. "Your conscience?" A dry chuckle spilled out of the speaker, his chuckle. "Wish I had one of those. The glow's a headlamp. Kid's waiting. He's going to hand you something and tell you things you won't want to hear. Listen anyway. Do not open those crates. Do not stop moving longer than you have to." "Why should I trust you?" Cole said. "Because I know the name of your first dispatcher," the voice replied. Easy, unhurried, like a man pointing at the sky and saying that old cloud looks like a horse. "Ricky Dale. Taught you to keep a second pair of gloves wedged behind the radiator so they'd dry by morning." Cole shut his eyes for a beat. He could smell hot rubber, dirty coffee pots, the hand soap in a dispatch office that had closed a decade ago. "Last chance," the copy of him said softly. "You can keep north and hope those boys behind you are the friendly kind. Or you can take the advice of a voice that sounds a lot like yours." The gravel road turned right under his hands, as if it had decided for him. Cottonwoods hunched low over a shallow creek. The culvert was a dark grin. Beyond the trees, a single headlamp bobbed like a captive star. Cole eased the rig onto a beaten track that might once have been the lane to a hunting lease. Grass whispered against the fuel tanks. Brush scraped the trailer in a long, light-fingered stroke. He pulled up where the ground went soft and stopped with the nose pointed back the way they'd come. He left the motor idling, habit as sacrosanct as grace before supper, and reached behind the seat for his rain shell. When his boots hit mud, the night pressed in close and personal. The rain had thinned to a mist you didn't feel until it found the back of your neck. The headlamp swung toward him and steadied, revealing a kid, 20-something, narrow-shouldered in a thrift store parka, face pale with too much screen light and not enough sun. The beam gilded the water on his eyelashes and found a neat folder under his arm, held with the same white-knuckled care a man might give a newborn. "You're Cole," the kid said, not asking. "I'm Evan." He spoke with a soft Texas panhandle burr, a county voice that had been sanded down by time at a state university. "Everyone keeps telling me who I am," Cole said. "What I am is wet and low on patience." Evan flicked the headlamp downward so they weren't staring into it. "You can be both," he said, and the corner of his mouth tried out a smile that didn't quite stick. "I'm supposed to tell you not to stop for anyone wearing a badge unless it's daylight and there are church ladies present. Also not to turn on anything that chirps, pings, or pulses. Also to please not open the cargo under any circumstance." "Supposed to by who?" Cole asked. Evan's gaze flicked past him toward the road. The SUV's lights had gone out. It was a shadow squared against a darker patch of trees. Cole felt his chest tighten as if the night had gripped him by the ribs. "By people who are trying to keep you alive," Evan said. "And some other folks who don't care if you live. Only that a certain sequence doesn't run when it hits the city. They don't agree on much. They agree about that." Cole gave the kid a long, level look. "You bring me paper?" Evan offered the folder. Inside were maps printed on cheap office stock. County roads webbed like cracks in old paint, arrows traced with a shaky hand around intersections, exits, cul-de-sacs that looped back into pasture. Another page carried a list of radio frequencies with thick underlines beside a few and the words "Do not transmit" scribbled by hand. On the last page, someone had pasted a photo. It showed a squat, windowless building like a rural substation. On the concrete box, a muddled spray paint scrawl in block letters, "Vector, Yard 4." In the bottom corner, a timestamp hung without a date, as if the camera had refused to commit. "Where's this?" Cole asked. "Oklahoma side, east of the loop," Evan said. "But they got sisters. They look like electrical guts. They're not." "What are they?" Evan wrapped both arms around himself as if the map paper had blown cold. "You ever hear a field sing? Not a choir field, grass, dirt, air. You ever park overnight way out in West Texas and feel like your bones are vibrating? Oil pump a mile off can do that," Cole said. "Yeah," Evan said, a little breathless, like a man finding a foothold on a stepladder that might shift. "This isn't a pump. It's a system that sleeps until someone touches it with the right key. Your crates," he swallowed. "Think of them as the hand that knows where the light switch is." Cole imagined the stretch of interstate that rode the north edge of the city, the way traffic poured along it all day like a bright river. He pictured his trailer crossing the county line with undertones and harmonics humming under the surface. Tones a person couldn't hear, but a city might. He heard himself ask, in a voice that came out easier than he felt, "What happens if the switch flips?" Evan looked down at the mud, then up at Cole's face like he might find permission there. "I don't know all of it. Pieces. You get patterns, congestion, density, rhythms of home and work, sirens, ball games, church bells. Every American city is a drum. Somebody built a drum key." "Why me?" Cole said. "Why this load? There are 1,000 ways to smuggle a hand to a light switch." Evan's lips trembled and then steadied. "Because you drive the rim. You don't go downtown unless money makes you. You circle close, then peel away. Someone smart figured out a truck that never quite touches the target can carry something the target can feel but not see. Cole turned his head as the SUV eased its door open without a light or chime. A figure got out, tall, hood up, moving like he knew his legs. The ground were old friends. No hurry, no posture. That scared Cole more than a hard charge. He lifted the mic. "Voice," he said. "You still there?" Static first, rain knitting itself into sound. Then his own breath coming back to him, his own roughness. "Here," it said. "You've got company." "Tell me something I can't see," Cole said. "They've got 3, the voice answered, quiet as a hand on a dog's neck. "One at the tree line, one at your passenger side, one walking up the middle like it's his home. If they speak, they'll speak soft. If they move, they'll move calm. That's how you know they're not stopping you for a taillight." Cole shut the CB off and killed the dash entirely. The cab sank into a hush so complete he could hear the wet tick of hot metal cooling. He laid the mic in its cradle like it might scream if it fell. "Get up in the cab," he told Evan, low. "Latch the door. If he tries the handle, you rake his knuckles with that breaker bar. Don't wait for permission." Evan scrambled into the passenger seat and pulled the latch with a clicking fierceness that said he had been rehearsing this moment since before he knew Cole's name. Cole stepped forward through the rain until the hooded man was near enough that Cole could smell a faint cologne and the sharper scent of rubber from new soles. "Morning," the man said pleasantly. His voice was middle management smooth, a church deacon on a budget committee. "Trouble with your load, sir?" "No trouble," Cole said. He shifted his weight a hair, enough to feel gravel move. "Just a wrong turn." "Let us help you get right," the man said. "We have paperwork from a federal partner." He smiled a small, precise smile, the one you wear when you've broken a horse that thought it couldn't be ridden. "There's a transfer site a few miles that way. Safer for everybody." "Partner's name?" Cole asked. "Names are confusing at night," the man said. "Come daylight, everything reads clear." Behind him, the second shadow paused at the step to the fuel tank and set one gloved hand on the grab bar. On the far side of the road, the third shadow forgot to be a shadow and turned his head to spit. That was how Cole knew they were not ghosts. Ghosts didn't have chew. He smiled back, a tired trucker who had been told a dozen polite lies since Memphis. "How about this?" he said. "You print me your safe little transfer on paper, I'll sign and let you tug. But I don't sign fog." The man's smile stayed, but the eyes cooled a degree. "Sir," he said, "we don't have to make this hard." "I agree," Cole said, and thumbed the starter. The Detroit caught at once because Cole treated his machine like a dog he meant to live with. The hooded man stepped back neat as a dancer. He didn't like to scramble. "Do not stop," the radio voice said from the dark dash, even though the CB was dead. Cole did not look at it. He floated the clutch and rolled. The trailer groaned across sodden grass, found gravel, found the narrow lane. The man by the step let go. The one at the tree line swung his chin and hissed something tight. The SUV's engine turned over, a purr that meant money. Evan clutched the armrest so hard the vinyl squeaked. "Are we outrunning them?" he whispered. "We're out-stubborning them," Cole said, which had been his method since the year he first climbed into a borrowed day cab with a milk run and a borrowed cap. Left at the county blacktop, the voice in the not-quite-silent air advised, intimate as a thought. Then past a white barn with a blue roof. There's a lay-down yard with a half-rotten pole barn. Tuck in there, lights off. I'll walk you out. "Who are you?" Cole asked, because it mattered. not because he expected an answer, but because asking set a boundary. I still name things. I'm still the man with hands on a wheel. Think of me as a version of you who believed one wrong thing, the voice said. I'm trying to make that right. Hell of a slogan, Cole muttered. He caught the blacktop and turned. The barn rose up like a whale in the mist, blue roof bruised by weather. He cut across a washboard shoulder into a yard pocked with puddles and tire scars. The skeletal pole barn crouched at the far end, its tin roof sagging on creosote posts. He nosed the tractor in and straightened until the trailer shadowed itself against the dark. Kill everything that sings, the voice said. Phones, trackers, transponders, toys. Cole snapped out the fuse for the dash cam. He pulled the plug on the Bluetooth head unit. He powered down his phone, then wrapped it in a scrap of foil from a crumpled snack bag and set it in the metal glove box like a kid being put in time out. Now breathe, the voice said. Count 10 of them. Slow. Cole did. Not because a radio told him to, but because breath and counting had saved him in a jackknife on a Utah grade 1 mean January. One breath to keep his hands soft, another to keep his eyes wide, a third to keep the world big enough to hold road, ice, trailer, and the knowledge that he was going to live. When he reached the 10th, rain drummed the roof a little less hard. The night had shifted, a tide turning under bare feet. Evan's voice came from the dark beside him, barely more than air. Cole, what if it's not just a switch? What if it's a mouth? And what we're hauling is a tongue? Then we don't let it lick the city, Cole said, and surprised himself by smiling at how stupid and right that sounded. From out in the wet, fainter than thunder, nearer than wind, something spoke in a hush that wasn't sound. It wasn't the radio. It wasn't the boy. It wasn't the man by the road. It rose through the frame rails and the floorboards and the meat of Cole's palms where they rested on the wheel. Come back, it said, in a voice built out of every whisper he had heard at every loading dock at 3 a.m. Come back and make it easy. Cole closed his eyes and pictured his son on a Little League infield, dirt on his knees, shouting that the ball was his. He pictured his ex-wife's face the morning she said she wanted a life that didn't smell like diesel. He pictured himself at an empty diner counter with black coffee and eggs that steamed in January light. No, he told the hush, without moving his lips. Find another driver. The hush swelled, puzzled, like a stranger surprised to be told no in his own kitchen. From the CB's dead speaker, a thread of breath. Good, the not quite him said. Now we talk about how to keep moving without letting them close the loop. Talk quick, Cole said, rolling his shoulders like a boxer loosening up between rounds. Because I've got a tail with money in the shocks and rain that's learning my name. He reached down, patted the dash where the St. Christopher swung, not like a prayer, not like a superstition, but like a habit that had carried him from boyhood to this wet, breathing moment. Outside, the lay-down yard exhaled diesel and old wood. Beyond it, the county slept the way America does in the middle of a weeknight. Dogs twitching, refineries murmuring, big cities dreaming in grid lines. Cole watched the rain drip off the barn roof in bead chains and thought, with a calm that surprised him, that the game had started a long time ago and he had just realized he was in it. Okay, he said to the voice and the kid in the dark. Where to next? The pole barn creaked the way old wood breathes after rain, a slow settling that made the dark sound alive. Cole let the tractor idle long enough to feel the rhythm smooth out beneath his boots. Evan sat very still, as if stillness could make him less visible to whatever watched the yard from the tree line. The boy's headlamp lay in his lap, turned off, his thumbs restless on the elastic strap. "You okay?" Cole asked without looking over. Evan exhaled. "Define okay." "Not bleeding? Still arguing with your own brain," Cole said. "That kind of okay." "I'm at the part where the arguments go in circles," Evan said, voice a notch too bright. "Which is also the part where I ask if you ever wish you just kept driving." "Every night around the hour when coffee turns to mud," Cole said. "Also every morning after I make a good call." He cut the engine entirely. Without the hum, the rain sounded like 1,000 mice chewing paper. Somewhere beyond the yard, a night train dragged a long moan over the prairie. "Tell me about your maps, kid." Evan unfolded the folder on his knees, the pages crackling. "There are nodes," he said. "Old yards, substations nobody visits, federal buildings with contractors nobody recognizes. They look like ordinary infrastructure. The trick is what ties them. It's not copper or fiber. It's resonance. Somebody figured out how to use the everyday noise of a city like a carrier wave." Cole scratched the side of his jaw. "English, please." "Okay. Imagine every city in America as a guitar body," Evan said, warming to the picture. "Highways are strings. Traffic is fingers. Weather is humidity swelling wood. People are the hand that strums without knowing. Most of the time the noise is just noise. But if you build devices that ring only when the right notes hit, like a glass singing when the choir hits a pitch, you can make those devices talk to each other without lines. That's the loop. It can be quiet for years. Then one night, a truck like yours hauls in the equivalent of a tuning fork, and everything starts humming together. Only then you aren't holding an instrument. The instrument's holding you. "And the crates are the fork," Cole said. He pictured wood, foam, the mechanical hush of something that didn't want to wake up in a world that moved too much. "Who hired me?" "Vector Civil on paper," Evan said. "They are 3 shells deep. The people under the shell are a contractor your dispatcher has never heard of, working through a logistics broker who swears they only move boring things like non-lethal barriers and portable lights. Somewhere below that," he tapped the map, "someone who knows the taste of power, enough to prefer eating alone." Cole nodded once. Hunger like that, he understood. "And the men in the SUV?" "Think of them as insurance adjusters with guns," Evan said, clumsy humor landing and tilting. "They belong to a private outfit with a patriotic name and an office park address. They're paid to keep the fork from getting lost. They come with paperwork they can wave if a county deputy gets curious. They smile like ushers." Cole remembered the precise, tidy smile under the hood. "Ushers into what?" "Into handing off your cargo somewhere quiet where the big switch waits," Evan said. "They don't need you to go downtown. They only need you to cross a particular line and stop long enough for the fork to be heard. After that, the city will carry the tune for them." Cole felt a small sorrow move through him, like an animal making a path in grass. Sorrow that the world could be bent with such simple leverage. Sorrow that men who liked tidy smiles had found the fulcrum and kept their shoes clean. From the dead radio, a breath. "You can still take west and outrun them," the familiar voice murmured. "Cross at the river near the rail yard. Switch the tractor at a co-op you will recognize by the smell of molasses. Change the plates with the set tape to the air intake." Evan startled. "How is he?" "Save the wonder," Cole said gently. He leaned forward and tapped the dash where the speaker lurked. "How do you know where a farmer keeps his molasses, friend?" A pause, then the soft shrug of his own cadence. "Because I tried running once, and learned all the places men like us duck when we're scared. Cole let the silence sit. A chess clock ticking between players who both knew the board. "I'm not running yet," he said. "First, I need to choose a road for a reason." "What reason is big enough?" Evan asked, the question bare as bone. "People," Cole said, and felt the word land as something heavier than talk. He could see a map inside his head the way he'd seen them since he was a boy, in a back seat counting exits like sheep. Neighborhoods he'd never live in, but carried like old songs. Factories that coughed steam into bright winter. Porch lights like constellations stitched low, as if the sky had dropped to rest. My deliveries don't belong to me, but they belong to someone. So if I'm hauling a switch that flips the lights in people's lives without them choosing, the reason is I can pick where this thing doesn't get to sing. Evan watched him with a gravity beyond his years. "Where do we steer then?" "First, I want to see what I'm up against," Cole said. "Not the crates, the men." He reached down and slid the operator's window open an inch. Rain breath cooled the cab. "If they're patient, they're trained. If they're twitchy, they're rented muscle. Both kinds bleed. Only one kind reads your eyes." "You're going to bait them?" Evan asked. Cole smiled, a tired, private smile. "I'm going to be a man who appears to have changed his mind." He thumbed the starter again. The engine woke smooth and low. Headlights stayed dark. He eased out of the pole barn, letting the weight speak to the tires, letting the tires answer. Rain thread-lit the yard. The SUV crouched at the mouth of the lane like a black beetle. Cole rolled toward it, as if the lane decided itself. He put the tractor at an angle that offered the men an easy conversation. Driver's window handy, sight lines clear, nothing to spook a deer. The hooded man stepped out again. Same posture, same clean shoes, rain jeweling on the fabric like a catalog photo. Two more silhouettes slipped from the timber. One dangled something to the side that could be a flashlight or the kind of compact carbine that looks like a toy until it coughs. Cole pushed his elbow to the window ledge and let his hand hang down so it could be seen and read as empty. He made his face heavy with the kind of resignation men wear when they think about mortgages. "All right," he called over the hiss. "Maybe you boys help me fix an address." The hooded man tilted his head a shade, polite interest. "Happy to." "You know the lay-down yard off the loop?" Cole asked. "The one that used to hold pipe when the county still dug ditches by hand? I hate backing this rig in there. You got something flatter?" The man's smile flickered, then settled like a napkin smoothed after a spill. "We can do better than that," he said. "There's a transfer site on a paved pad not 3 miles away, west side. Well lit, cameras for safety. We'll escort and have you out by morning." "There it is," Cole murmured to Evan, not moving his lips. "The word escorted. Men who trust the law do not use it." "Copy." The too familiar voice whispered from nowhere and everywhere, as if their thoughts had become a party line. "Watch his left hand. He carries his authority there. His right is for greeting, his left is for keeping." The hooded man lifted both hands in a placating, open palms gesture, as if to agree with the invisible counsel. "Sir, we all want to get you out of the rain. No need to make this theatrical." "You got paper?" Cole asked mildly. "Because my boss likes paper. Paper keeps the tax man from turning into a poet." The man's eyes clicked once, a small camera shutter behind a human face. "In the vehicle," he said. "If you'll idle behind us." Cole cut him off by doing what polite men hate most. He made a choice without waiting to be guided. He turned the wheel, gave the Detroit a soft breath of throttle, and rolled past the SUV with inches to spare. forcing the man to step back neat again. The shadow with the not a flashlight stiffened, then remembered he was a shadow and softened. The third figure vanished into brush on the driver's side, like a fish going deeper. "Left at the lane," the ghost of him advised. "Then follow the fence until it breaks. There is a creek crossing that looks foolish in this weather. It isn't if you commit." "You ever notice how every decision worth making sounds like that?" Cole said, only half a joke. He took the left, keeping his speed a hair above foolish. The fence appeared, rusted wire patched with baling twine, American solutions to American problems. The break in the fence came where flood had cut a mouth through the bank, mud glazed and slick. He lined the tractor up, the nose aimed at black water that held the gray of sky like memory. "Commit," Evan whispered. Cole did. The tractor's weight settled the way a bull sets its shoulders and goes. Water shouldered up and slid off the bumper, slapped the steps, tapped cold fingers under the door. The trailer followed slow and stubborn, the way something will if it believes you believe. The rear tires climbed the far bank with a wet laugh. Cole let out a breath he had been pretending not to hold. Behind them, lights probed the yard, then swept and multiplied. The SUV had friends. Red blinkers stung the mist like insect eyes. "We buy ourselves a few minutes," the voice said. "Maybe 15, maybe less." "Enough to make one good choice," Cole replied. He eased the tractor onto a farm road that threaded through fields shorn to stubble. Out here, the rain thinned to a patient drizzle. To their right, a pair of grain silos hunched like old soldiers. To the left, a billboard with a faded calf and a smiling child offered a petting zoo that had closed long before the kid in the picture learned to drive. "Tell me why you?" Cole said into the near dark. "You said you are me, only wrong about one thing. Which thing did you get wrong?" Evan glanced at him, unsure if he was hearing what was real. The voice considered, and when it came, it wore a shame that felt like a texture beneath sound. "I believed I could carry everything by myself," it said. "That if I just stayed awake longer, drove cleaner, kept my hands tighter on the wheel, I could keep all the people on the map safe. I was wrong. You can't carry a city alone. The men behind you count on that mistake. They want lone drivers, not convoys. They want quiet deals, not crowds." Cole grunted. "Crowds are noisy. Noise is their thing." "True," the voice said. "But there's a kind of noise they can't ride. The noise people make when they decide together." "You telling me to call the news?" Cole asked dryly. "Or church ladies?" Evan's startled laugh eased something in the cab. "Church ladies have range," he said. "They can organize a food drive in an ice storm." Cole thought about that. Hot casseroles lined up on fellowship hall tables, metal folding chairs, paper cups, the murmur of women who knew who was sick, who needed a ramp built, who had a son in trouble. Women who did not scare easy because life had already thrown scarier things than men with tidy smiles. "Not yet," the voice said. "But soon. You will need people who don't scare easy." The farm road rose to meet a county blacktop. Cole took it east, then south, letting the geometry inside him align with the geometry outside. Lines, arcs, junctions. The map in Evan's lap rustled quietly with each turn, like a small pet breathing. "You got family?" Cole asked the boy. Not because he wanted to wound him with worry, but because secrets have a way of turning people brittle. "A mother in Amarillo," Evan said. "A sister in grad school who thinks I'm still doing freelance code." He swallowed. "I didn't tell them because I wanted this to work before I made them afraid." Cole nodded like he knew the exact shape of that impulse, because he did. "You tell them after," he said. "Win or lose. People who love you will handle the truth better than silence." Evan looked at him carefully. "You the same with your people?" "Sometimes I am the worst of my people," Cole said, not unkindly. "Sometimes I think silence is grace." Rain worked its way down the seam of the windshield in thoughtful beads. The blacktop unwound. As the county gave way to the long outer brush of the city, lights thickened the horizon, a low honey glow under cloud. "Here's the part that matters," the voice said, steady. "Ahead, there's a fork. Right takes you toward the loop and the official transfer pad. Left keeps you near the river, skirting, passing boatyards and scrap yards, and the kind of shops that do cash jobs and don't offer receipts. If we take left, there's a cooperative down near the mills. The foreman owes me the kind of favor men keep under their hat. We can swap tractors, confuse plate readers, and shave off a signature the fork is listening for." "If we take right?" Cole asked. "You will deliver what your bill of lading says," the voice said, "and a city will learn a new song." Evan pressed his palm flat to the map as if to stop it shaking. "Left," he said. "Please." Cole listened to the engine, to rain, to the tug of muscle in his forearms where road rode itself into him over years. He saw his son at 11, wild for go-karts, hair blown straight back, shouting that speed was just balance with its eyes closed. He saw a Little League diamond turned to soup by spring rains and a line of parents laughing through weather because kids needed the trying more than the win. "Left," Cole agreed. He took it like a promise, and the blacktop narrowed into an industrial peninsula of America that always looks the same, no matter the state. Chain-link fences soldered with kudzu, forklifts asleep with forks raised, sodium lamps wearing halos, hoists waiting like gallows for honest work. The river whispered thick and brown. A tug lowed to someone around a bend. They rolled past a boatyard where two men in slickers smoked with their backs to the rain, the cigarettes hissing. The men watched the tractor the way working men watch another man's burden. Curious, but not greedy. Measuring weight, angle, the set of the wheels, the set of the driver's mouth. "There," the voice said. "See the sign half fallen that says Co-op number 7. Pull in. Kill your lights before the gate." Cole did as told, not because the voice commanded, but because everything around him agreed. The hunger of the SUV's lights behind them, the instinct in his neck that says, "Now, now." He eased the rig into the shadow of a corrugated shed. A cat streaked from under a pallet and shot them a look that said humans were late and loud. A man in a waxed jacket stepped from a pool of darkness, with his hands raised chest high, palms out, as if soothing a spooked colt. He had a face like an outcropping, a steady piece of earth that weather-shaped but did not move. "You're early for harvest," he said to Cole, eyes going from driver to boy to trailer. "Early's better than never," Cole said. He kept his voice respectful. Places like this ran on a kind of polite that had nothing to do with bowing and everything to do with not wasting someone's night. "You take swaps on credit?" The man's gaze flicked once to the shadows behind them where headlights might bloom. "For a friend of a friend," he said. "Once." Evan's head came up, hope cutting through his fear like a flare. "What's the work?" the man asked, already judging whether his yard could bear it. "Trade me a tractor with dead eyes," Cole said. "Nothing bright, nothing that chirps. If you got a hood that doesn't mind being ugly, I'll make it pretty with gratitude later." The man's mouth tipped into the kind of smile that respects a clean request. "I have a Mac that rattles like a drum kit full of bolts and a paint job that makes preachers curse. She'll pull a house if you treat her like a stubborn aunt. He jerked his chin toward a row of shadows. Back yours there. We'll do this quick, quiet, and uninsurable. Together they moved. Chocks thumped, lines hissed, iron clanked in the old song that binds men across trades. Cole felt better with work in his hands. Evan fetched and held, and tried not to be in the way, getting less good at the last part because action was a relief after thinking. They were nearly done when the yard's night air changed shape, the way a room feels different when someone stands in the doorway. Across the fence line, 2 pairs of lights ghosted along the access road. Quiet, predatory, they cut and drifted, searching the gray for the exactly right gray. The man in the waxed jacket spat in the gravel like an old superstition, then met Cole's eyes without flinch. "You bring wolves to my hen house, you take them away," he said. "No heat, just the rule of the yard." "I aim to," Cole said. He clamped the last line, thumped the mud flap, and climbed into the Mac. The cab smelled like dust, coffee baked into vinyl, and pencil shavings. The starter caught reluctantly, then settled into a heartbeat you felt in your teeth. He looked over at Evan, who held the folder to his chest like a shield. "Seatbelt," he said. Evan clicked in with shaking hands. The co-op man stood with his thumbs in his jacket, watching like a statue commissioned by caution. As Cole rolled, the man lifted 2 fingers in a small salute that meant, "Go earn this favor." They eased down the lane and nosed out into the industrial night, wearing a new face. The old tractor stood under the shed, like a decoy duck on still water. Across the way, the hunter lights paused, confused by the shape change the way a predator gets confused when a herd shifts and the weakest calf is no longer where it belonged. "Listen," the voice said, low with approval and warning. "The loop will try to find you another way. It doesn't only use plates and transponders. It uses rhythm. It uses habit. You will need to drive like someone you are not. Choose a man, alive or dead, whose pattern you can borrow." Cole thought of Ricky Dale and the second pair of gloves behind the radiator, of the way Ricky taught him to time his shifts by the feel of his tongue pressed to the roof of his mouth, of the way Ricky sang along to stations that only came in right when storm clouds made their own antenna. "All right," Cole said. "Tonight I'll be a man who talks to the road like it's a dog." Evan smiled, brief and grateful. "Then tell it to heel." They reached the river road and slid into the thin stream of trucks that moved at that hour. The Mac shouldered the weight with a different humor than the Detroit. Old school, mule sturdy. Cole let his breathing fall into the engine's count, into the wiper's sweep, into the ghost city's inhale and exhale beyond the levee. Behind them, in the wet dark near a co-op that smelled like molasses and hard choices, men with tidy smiles looked at one another and felt a small, unfamiliar itch at the base of the neck. The itch of being a step behind men who do not conform. "Next," the voice said. Soft. "We head for the edges of a place where steel sings. Bring the fork close enough to make it hungry, but not enough to feed it. We'll show whoever is listening that the song can go wrong." "And then?" Evan asked, his fear steadier now, shaped by aim. "Then we find the people who don't scare easy," Cole said, his hands light but sure on the old wheel. "And we tell them to make their own kind of noise." They parked under a bridge where the river kept time with a slow, patient tongue. The Mac hulked there like a ship stranded on land, its headlights tucked away so the city's night could not write its number across a sky that liked to keep secrets. The fog off the water smelled of iron and old gasoline. and the cab held a weight of quiet that made their voices small and precise. "You go in," Cole told Evan. "You're the kid with the maps. You're the one with the explanation. Talk to the foreman. Tell him we need a place to open one crate, long enough to see what it is without letting it sing." Evan folded and refolded the papers until the edges rolled like small waves. "You sure?" he asked. "We steal a peek and somebody hears—" "We don't open the crate on the road," Cole said. "We don't let it touch a city grid. We get the secret in the light of a yard that won't call the police at the first sign of trouble." He sounded surer than he felt. Inside him a long list of habits tugged. Always finish the run, always get paid, always sign the papers. Those were habits they wanted him to bow to. These newer habits were heavier. Keep the world from being forced to sing without asking. Evan slipped off into the mist, with his headlamp tucked into his jacket like a contraband. Cole watched him go the way men watch a small boat cut loose into gray water. Hopeful, anxious that the wind will find it and teach it new things. The co-op foreman met them at the back of the shed with a flashlight that bled yellow across his face. He smelled like tar and coffee with a tolerance for both. "You taking one out?" he asked without greeting. "We need to look," Evan said. "Just one, for paperwork." "Keep your eyes open," the foreman said, "and your hands off anything that hums." He used the word like a prayer. Cole slipped his hat low and walked to the trailer. Rain had feathered the plywood in a web that made it look like old skin. Stencils marked the crate with letters spaced neat and impersonal. Vector Civil, Harmony Module, Unit A. Beneath the stencil, someone had scrawled a serial in a hurried marker that bled on the wet wood. The paint smell hit him the way a weather forecast hits a man sitting too long in the cab. Familiar, small, true. Evan's headlamp clicked on, and his face floated in a halo. "Harmony Module," he whispered, reading. "What the hell is that?" Cole found a pry bar and levered the crate's lid just enough to make a tooth of space. The inside smelled like clean linen and metal, the sterile scent of things that are built to be precise and dangerous. Foam hugged a long device the size of a man's forearm, capped with polished brass and a cluster of glass ribs that looked like the throat of a pipe organ. Wires coiled soft as ropes. A little plate bore letters in a language that was both branding and warning. Vector Civil, Acoustic Coupler. Evan made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. "That's it," he said. "That's the fork." Cole looked at the thing and felt a long, old fear rise like a tide under his ribs. It was pretty in the way certain weapons are pretty. Calm surfaces, clean engineering, a knowing that someone had thought enough to make it beautiful, so that men would trust it. The device had an elegance that made his skin want to crawl. "It looks like an instrument," he said aloud. "It looks like a lie," Evan said. "An instrument for a house of cards." They eased the module out and set it on a crate top covered by a tarp. Cole touched the brass with the backs of his fingertips, the way you touch a thing you do not want to wake. The metal hummed under his skin like a held note. Almost nothing, a presentiment. He jerked his hand back as if bitten. "It's sensitive," the foreman said behind him. "You got that?" "We do," Cole said. He felt something like heat crawl up the back of his neck, a worry that whatever this machine did, it didn't limit itself to labels. "Does it need power?" "It's passive," Evan said, eyes wide. "It listens. It amplifies what's around it. If you take a city's noise and feed it into one, it learns the pattern. Put enough in, and they don't need wires." Cole imagined the city, its subway grating like a bass note, its stadiums like timpani, its traffic 1,000 tiny picks on metal. He saw the fork placed in a quiet room and listened in his head as the urban chorus found the pitch. He thought of people in apartments upstairs and children with radios. And he understood in a raw place that what sounded like infrastructure could be used like a throat. "We can't let them get to the city with this," Evan said, and his voice carried the strain of someone whose heart had found its job and then discovered how little it could do alone. From the road came a sound they all recognized. Headlights, careful, fog-streaked, and patient. The men with tidy smiles had not gone. They were around the bend, listening to other things while they listened for these. Cole covered the module with a tarp and shut the crate. He handed the foreman a bill folded small, gratitude and payment for trust, and watched the man pocket it with a look that asked no questions. Respect traded for coin was how this country ran on edges and in sheds. Back in the cab, Cole peeled the foil from around his pocket phone like opening a letter, then wrapped it back up again and tucked it away. He pulled the CB from its mount and listened. Static. The city sounded like a far engine, patient, unknowable. "Okay," Evan said. "So we know what they want. We know why. But who are they actually working for?" Vector Civil is a name, but names hide hands. Cole grunted. Names always hide hands. That's the economy of trust. "Look, Evan, there's a road where I grew up. Men there used to say, 'Watch the hands, not the mouth.' If a man has a tie that's clean and a gun that's well-oiled, his hands will tell you if he's honest." Evan laughed, brittle. "You do talk like your father." Cole's smile was a bruise of memory. Mine was a quiet man who fixed tractors because he liked iron talking back. I'm the son who learned to listen. They had until dawn. The SUV had not moved closer. Instead, it prowled the outer lane like a wolf testing fences. The three men in its shadow had been patient, and patience had teeth. "They'll pull a transfer at first light, probably," the voice said through the dead CB like a breath in a chapel. "They'll have a short list of docks with permits. They won't like surprises." Cole thought of the map in Evan's lap and the co-op man's steady chin. He thought of people who did not scare easy, who sussed out danger the way a farmer susses out weather. Church ladies came to mind, a chorus of small saviors who could call a congregation and call it to the streets for casseroles and for prayer, and who would not scatter at a single man's aggressive badge. Laborers from the yards, shopkeepers who kept an eye as much for notice as for neighbor. Those people were not planning ambushes, but they could be organized into a kind of noise that made instruments cry dishonest. "We need to blow the cover on this exchange," Cole said. "Not by making a spectacle, but by making a community know there's a reason to be awake." Evan paled. "You want to stop them by getting people to look? That will get them angry." "Getting people to look is how you cancel the quiet that makes them brave," Cole said. "If this was about money alone, they'd take it to a warehouse and pay off rent. This is about control. Control needs quiet." Evan bit his lip. "So we make noise." "We make deliberate noise," Cole said. "We give the machine a chorus it doesn't expect. We use the thing to unmake the thing. There are ways of doing that. Modulation, phase shifts. I'm not an engineer, but I know a man who is." Evan blinked. "Who?" Cole's mind supplied names like Old Roots. In Shreveport, there's a man named Luther Rowe. He used to fit speakers into choirs so the sermon could be heard over thunder. He owes me for a favor I never paid back. If we can get him a picture of the module, he'll tell us how to make the module sing something else, something none of the maps expect. Evan's hope was a small, quick animal. How do we get to Shreveport? Cole thought about distances in terms of coffee and sleep. Shreveport was a long haul from where they sat. A promise of miles and time, a promise of being on the road into daylight with men behind who did not like to be outrun. He almost said they could not, then stopped. There were promises you made because they were true even if they put you at risk. We don't go yet, he said. We gather. We confuse. We act like men who are rearranging what's obvious. We use what we have, a co-op, a foreman, a man who owns a choir of speakers. We make ourselves less like a single truck and more like a sound that can't be swallowed. Evan nodded, jaw set. He had one foot in the kind of life that kept maps and another in the kind that made choices that could snap those maps like brittle paper. He was young enough to believe their plan could work and old enough to know plans grow teeth in execution. They rolled out of the co-op yard in the stolen Mac like specters of a different trade. The old tractor clattered in a rhythm that felt honest under the road. Behind them, the SUV followed for a while, then peeled away into the mist like water finding a seam. At the far edge of the bridge, a pair of blue lights blinked for a truck at a way station. An ordinary thing in an odd night. Cole drove with hands light but deliberate. The kind of hands that hold a child on a bicycle the first time the parent lets go. He felt the trailer's weight as if it were a quiet animal reluctant to move. He thought of the people who would wake to a song not of their choosing and tried to picture their faces. Mrs. Klein with her knitting, the dishwasher at the diner who stayed late for extra shifts, the high school janitor who hummed down hallways. He felt, beneath the practical thunk of diesel and road, the pressure of being the man who could keep those people from learning a new chorus. They stopped only once before dawn, at a church parking lot that smelled faintly of lemon oil and last night's hymnals. Evan went inside to rustle envelopes and see who might be awake. Cole walked the lot and leaned with his back against the Mac's tire, looking out at the city horizon where lights had started to lose their edge to morning. When Evan came back, his face wore the hard softening of someone who had done more than he thought he could. "There's a woman who runs a food bank here," he said. "Her name's Mary Stanton. She doesn't scare. She'll bring people who'll look for the right reasons." Cole nodded. "Good. Call her. Tell her you're a friend of a friend who needs to know how to stop a song." Evan hesitated. "And if she says no?" Cole's laugh was small. "She won't. Church women don't do nothing. They just do things differently than men with guns. They get people to show up with lasagnas and to stand in the way when something bad tries to be quiet." Evan swallowed, then dialed. The phone in his hand felt oddly small. When he put it to his ear, his hand trembled a little, not from fear, but from the fact that he was calling other people into a night they could not unsee. Cole watched the horizon turn from black to bruised navy to the thin blue of a morning that makes men honest. He felt the weight of the crate somewhere behind him, and the module beneath the tarp like a throat waiting to sing. There were larger wars in the world, and smaller ones like the one he had stumbled into. Both had the same terrible architecture. Someone who wanted a thing done and the rest of the world put at risk to make it happen. Evan returned with a voice that had found courage in someone else. "She'll help," he said. "She asked for a meeting, a place, time. She says bring coffee." Cole allowed himself a smile that was more tired than amused. "Coffee is a kind of armor," he said. "Bring the thermos." They drove through the thinning night toward the first of their allies, a group that would not hide behind tidy smiles. Behind them, somewhere on the wet road, men who favored clean shoes adjusted their plans because the world had grown noisy in a way they had not expected. And for the first time since the man on the radio had told him to stop, Cole felt like he was not alone in the dark. The morning broke over Arkansas like a tired lamp flicking on in a cheap motel. Fog clung to the riverbanks, and everything smelled faintly of wet gravel and diesel. Cole guided the old Mac down a narrow road lined with oaks that dripped light rain onto the hood. Evan sat beside him, holding a styrofoam cup from a truck stop and trying not to spill on the map spread over his knees. They had been driving in silence for nearly 20 minutes when the boy finally said, "You really think this woman can help us?" Cole's eyes stayed on the road. "I think people who feed others are the closest thing we have to angels. Angels don't scare easy." Evan cracked a small grin. "You sound like you've met a few." "I've hauled enough relief loads to see the kind of folks who show up when the rest of the world runs out the back door," Cole said. "And they don't wear badges or suits. They wear aprons." The GPS, long ago muted, blinked aimlessly on the dash like a lost child. Cole turned it off and followed instinct. They came into a modest stretch of town, brick storefronts, a barber pole that hadn't spun since the Bush administration, and a Baptist church with a peeling sign that read, "Steep Hall Community Outreach, feeding body and soul since 1974. Cole parked the Mac behind the church, half hidden under a walnut tree, the trailer looming like a silent sermon. The bell tower leaned slightly, but the building had the posture of something too stubborn to fall. Mary Stanton met them at the back door before they could knock. She was a round woman in her late 50s, with sleeves rolled to her elbows and a streak of flour on her cheek. Her hair was tied back with a scarf patterned in tiny blue crosses. She took one look at Cole and Evan and seemed to see everything she needed to. "You're late," she said, "but the coffee's still hot. Come in before the wind catches you." Inside, the air smelled of yeast, onions, and something tomato-rich simmering in an industrial pot. The kitchen looked like a battlefield where the enemy was hunger. Racks of donated cans, rows of dented aluminum trays, a handful of volunteers moving with quiet efficiency. Mary poured 3 cups of coffee into mismatched mugs and handed them over. "Now," she said, "tell me why 2 men look like they've been chased through half the county by the devil himself." Evan started, fumbling with the words, but Cole held up a hand. "Ma'am," he said, "we're not here to start trouble. We're trying to keep a kind of trouble from spreading." Mary leaned against the counter, eyes sharp and patient. "And what kind is that?" "The kind that hums before it kills," Cole said. She frowned. "That sounds poetic." "I don't like poetic. Poetic doesn't get the lights back on or the pantry stocked." Cole reached into his jacket and unfolded a printout of the Vector Civil logo, torn from the bill of lading. "You ever heard of this outfit?" Mary studied it, squinting. "They did some road work east of here a few years back. Claimed to be building noise dampeners for the highway. People said the things looked more like antennas. Then they packed up in the middle of the night. Left half their equipment behind." She tapped the logo with a flour-dusted finger. "That's the one, isn't it?" Evan nodded. "They're not building dampeners. They're building amplifiers, for sound that doesn't stop at ears." Mary raised one brow. "You're telling me they're building what? Weapons?" "Not exactly," Cole said. "More like a way to turn a city into a speaker. And somebody wants to play the song." Mary let out a long breath, the kind reserved for bad news that sounded true. "And I suppose the 2 of you are the only ones standing between this thing and the rest of us?" "Seems that way," Cole said. "But we could use a choir." That got her attention. "A choir?" Cole smiled faintly. "The men behind this, they count on silence, on people staying in their lanes. You get enough folks asking questions, showing up in the wrong places, the loop breaks. Their machines start to choke on the noise." Mary set her mug down. You want me to make a scene? I want you to make supper, Cole said. Big one, lots of people. Somewhere the city can't ignore. Mary's eyes softened, but her jaw tightened in that way only stubborn women's do. You're talking about a crowd? Yes, ma'am. Well, she said, if the world's about to start humming itself into the grave, I'll be damned if it does it on an empty stomach. By noon, the church kitchen had transformed into a command center. Mary's volunteers, most of them women over 50 with names like Ruth Ann and Joe Ellen, moved with the kind of energy you only find in people who've been told it can't be done too many times. They chopped, stirred, baked, and made phone calls between batches of rolls. Evan worked at a folding table with his laptop open, maps glowing on the cracked screen. They've got 3 units moving, he told Cole. 2 on the north route toward Oklahoma City, 1 already in Dallas. If they activate all 3, they can cover the entire region. Then we stop the one we have, Cole said. Maybe the others don't get the tune. Evan rubbed his temples. We'd need interference, real interference. Something loud enough, constant enough to scramble the pattern before it sinks. Mary looked up from a tray of lasagnas. How loud we talking? City block loud, Evan said. Like 1,000 speakers blaring off key. Mary pursed her lips. We don't have that kind of hardware, but we've got people. And people can make plenty of noise if you give them a reason. Mary, Cole said carefully, if you bring them here, you'll paint a target on this place. She smiled, a fierce church lady kind of smile. Honey, I've been on somebody's list since I put a no-war sign in the parsonage window in 1971. You worry about your truck, I'll worry about my flock. Cole didn't argue. Some forces in the world were beyond reason, and most of them wore aprons. Bergkampfgauter by sunset, the parking lot of St. Paul's had turned into a neighborhood fair. Folding tables groaned under foil trays and crock pots. Kids ran between cars with sparklers. A group of teens tuned guitars on the church steps. It looked like any other small-town potluck, except for the quiet network of looks that passed between certain adults. Mary's army was organized, and they knew this was more than supper. Cole stood by the Mac, arms folded, watching the crowd swell. The old tractor gleamed dully under the lights strung from the church eaves. He'd parked it where everyone could see it, but no one could get too close. Evan joined him, looking both awed and terrified. You really think this will work? Doesn't have to work perfectly, Cole said. It just has to make them nervous. As if on cue, the first low hum rolled through the air. It wasn't from the truck. It came from somewhere farther away, subtle as a headache forming. Evan stiffened. That's it, he said. They're activating the loop remotely. Cole's jaw tightened. Then we give 'em feedback. Mary climbed the church steps and banged a spoon against a pot lid. All right, saints and sinners, she called, let's raise a little joyful noise. The band struck up, guitars, drums, an out-of-tune keyboard that somehow made everything sound more alive. The kids shouted, the crowd clapped, and laughter rippled across the lot. Someone started a chant of Hallelujah that spread until it became a wall of sound. The hum fought back, rising like an undertone beneath the music. It made the air shimmer. The church cross at the top of the steeple vibrated until the screws squealed. Evan looked at Cole. It's trying to sink. Then don't let it, Cole yelled. He yanked open the trailer's latch and threw the tarp off the crate. Turn it against itself. Evan's hands shook as he twisted the brass coupler, reorienting the module's ribs. The hum stuttered, dipped, then screamed. a sound too low for human throats, but high enough to rattle teeth. The lights flickered. Mary's band played louder, off-key and glorious. Cole grabbed the CB mic, even though it wasn't plugged in. "You hear that, boys?" he growled into the dead speaker. "That's what happens when you try to make Americans hum on command." The voice on the wire, his own, crackled through static. "Good, Cole. Hold it there. Let the people's noise burn the pattern." He did. He stood in the open, rain misting his shoulders, watching as the city lights along the horizon quivered like candles in a draft. Then, suddenly, the hum broke. The air snapped clear, and a silence fell so deep it rang. Evan sagged against the truck, breathless. Mary, on the church steps, raised her arms in triumph as the crowd roared and clapped without knowing exactly what they had done. Only that they had stood together and made enough noise to scare the dark back a step. Cole closed the trailer door and leaned against it, the metal warm from the strain of what it had carried. The voice came again, quieter now, almost gentle. "You changed the tune," it said. "They'll come again, harder next time." "I know," Cole said. "But now they know this town sings back." He looked toward Mary Stanton, who was ladling soup for a line of laughing strangers, and then toward Evan, who stared at the night sky as if waiting for it to start humming again. "Guess we better keep driving," Cole said. Evan nodded. "Where to?" "Shreveport," Cole said, starting the engine. "Time to find a man who knows how to make the devil dance off-key." And as the Mac rolled out past the church, the crowd behind them still singing into the warm night, Cole realized something that made him smile, despite the danger. For the first time in a long while, the road wasn't just a line between places. It was a living, beating thread tying people together, one song at a time. The morning after the storm of sound broke over St. Paul's, the sky stretched wide and exhausted. The air carried the scent of singed ozone, the kind that follows lightning, or something worse. Cole drove the old Mac out with the easy discipline of a man who had learned that fear burns less fuel when you keep your foot steady. Evan sat beside him, eyes glued to the laptop powered by a battered inverter. The boy's face was pale, framed by the ghost blue glow of his screen. "They're moving," he said quietly. "Whatever you did last night, it bought us maybe half a day. The Dallas node is active, and the Oklahoma loop's been delayed, but not dead." Cole grunted. Half a day's enough to make another mistake in the right direction. Evan gave him a look, halfway between confusion and awe. "You really live like that?" "Only way to live on the road," Cole said. "You plan for perfect days, you get eaten alive by the real ones." They passed a green sign that read, "Welcome to Louisiana," the paint peeling, the bayou stretching out behind it like an old lung. The road dipped and rose, cutting through low country that smelled of mud, diesel, and something wild enough to still fight back against pavement. Evan closed the laptop, the sound of the latch sharp in the cab. "Tell me about this Luther Rowe," he said. "You really think he can help us?" Cole chuckled softly. "Luther's the kind of man who can make a church organ sound like a thunderstorm. Back when I ran relief loads in the Delta, he rigged a system to broadcast sermons over busted loudspeakers using spare generator parts. Said God didn't mind a little distortion if the message got through." Evan smiled faintly. "Sounds like a character." "Most good men are," Cole said. "He's got a shop outside Shreveport, calls it Rowe Acoustics and General Salvage, which tells you about everything you need to know, half music, half chaos." The boy stared out the window at the endless wet green. "You trust him?" "I trust that he owes me," Cole said. And that's a different kind of faith. But it works. By mid-afternoon, they rolled down a narrow dirt lane that led into a yard littered with the bones of 100 machines. Busted jukeboxes, hollow speakers, rusted amplifiers, and old pickups that had been converted into workbenches. The smell of solder and barbecue sauce tangled in the air. A man stood under a tin awning with a pair of welding goggles perched on his forehead. He was wide-shouldered, silver-haired, and wearing a t-shirt that read, "Feedback is just another kind of prayer." "Lord have mercy," he called as Cole climbed out of the cab. "If it ain't the prodigal hauler himself." Cole laughed, the sound honest and unguarded. "Luther Rowe, you old noise merchant." They met in a hug that had the force of men who'd seen each other in too many bad moments. Luther pulled back, squinting at the Mac. "That ain't your usual rig." "Borrowed," Cole said. "Like half the good things in my life." Luther's gaze shifted to Evan, who was awkwardly standing by the truck. "And this young buck?" "Brains of the operation," Cole said. "We're running from a problem that hums." Luther's grin faded. "You better come inside." At the workshop was a cathedral of clutter. Racks of oscilloscopes, bins of coiled wire, half a piano welded into a wall of amplifiers. A dozen radios sat on a table, each tuned to different static. The sound filled the air like heavy rain. Evan set the folder on the workbench and spread out the schematics of the Harmony module. Luther leaned over, eyes narrowing as he traced the brass ribs and the central coil. "Well, I'll be damned," he murmured. "You're carrying an acoustic coupler that don't couple to anything human." "You can read this?" Evan asked. "Son, I built half this nonsense for the Army back when they thought sound could bend a man's will," Luther said. "They called it psychoacoustic deterrence. Fancy words for scaring folks with noise. But this ain't defense. This is communion. Something that listens to the world and makes it listen back." Cole crossed his arms. "Can you break it?" Luther rubbed his jaw. "Break it, no. But I can teach it bad manners. If it's meant to harmonize with a city, we can teach it to sing out of key. Enough distortion in the right frequency and the system starts to feed on its own noise. Collapse instead of sync." Evan's eyes lit up. "You mean turn it against itself?" "Exactly," Luther said. "Give it a song it can't stand." Cole nodded. "What do you need?" "A generator, a few steel plates, and about 6 hours," Luther said. "And nobody shooting at me while I work." Cole's mouth twitched. "Can't promise the last part, but we'll do what we can." As dusk fell, the workshop turned into a battlefield of sound. Luther worked like a man conducting an invisible orchestra, solder gun flashing, cables snaking across the floor, meters climbing. Evan helped where he could, fingers trembling but eager. Cole kept watch outside, the old habit of scanning horizons returning like muscle memory. By the time the stars came out, Luther stepped back from the bench. On it sat the Harmony module, now encased in a crude frame of copper wire and iron plates. A thin antenna jutted from the side like a broken finger. "Well?" Luther said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "If the devil tries to hum through this thing, he's going to choke on feedback." Cole grinned. "Music to my ears." Evan stared at the machine, awe and fear mingling in his face. "So, it's safe?" Luther hesitated. "Safe's a big word. It'll fry every listening node it talks to, but it might fry itself, and anything nearby, while it's at it." Cole looked at the device like a man reading a storm. "How close is close?" "Quarter mile, maybe," Luther said. You'd want to be farther if you like keeping your teeth. Evan paled. You mean we have to detonate it inside the network zone? Right in the heart of it, Luther said, where it can echo loud enough to break the chain. Cole rubbed the bridge of his nose. That means driving into the city, into Dallas. The silence that followed was the kind that smells like rain on hot concrete. Boys, Luther said finally, if you go in there, you ain't coming back the same. That machine's gonna sing its death song, and it's gonna want company. Cole looked out at the highway, a ribbon of darkness that led to a city glowing like a sleeping giant. Then we better make sure it sings the right tune. He reached out, clasped Luther's hand, and squeezed hard. You always said feedback was prayer. Well, tonight we're going to make the biggest prayer Texas ever heard. Luther smiled, tired but proud. Then God help the sinners in Dallas. They left before dawn, the Mac humming under the weight of destiny and bad decisions. The modified module sat strapped in the trailer like a caged angel. Evan watched the sky grow from black to bruised violet. What if it doesn't work? He asked softly. Cole didn't answer right away. He was watching the road, the way the morning fog peeled away like paper. Then we improvise, he said finally. We're Americans. That's what we do. The highway signs ahead pointed straight into Dallas, bright, electric, and waiting. And as the first hint of sun bled over the horizon, Cole pressed his foot to the pedal and muttered the kind of prayer that doesn't need a preacher to make it count. Let the city hear us coming. Dallas appeared on the horizon like a kingdom made of static. The skyline shimmered through morning haze, glass towers gleaming like tuning forks catching sunlight. Cole could feel the vibration before he heard it, a low, steady hum that came up through the road, through the steering wheel, and into his bones. It wasn't engine noise. It was something bigger, older, like the city was breathing through steel lungs. Evan sat forward, his fingers digging into the dashboard. It's already awake, he whispered. The other nodes are active. Cole didn't answer. He downshifted and let the Mac roll through the outskirts, warehouses, gas stations, strip malls half alive. Every neon sign seemed to flicker in the same rhythm, every streetlight pulsing faintly in time with the hum. The air itself buzzed, faint but constant, like a choir humming the same single note just below hearing. They pulled off the main highway onto a service road where the city thinned into gravel lots and chain-link fences. Ahead, a sign read, Vector Civil. Delivery entrance only. The letters were faded but official, the sort of sign that said, you don't belong here, but nobody will stop you if you look like you do. Evan swallowed hard. That's the yard from the photo. Cole nodded. Looks about right, ugly and forgettable. They idled at the gate. The yard beyond was wide and bare, concrete slabs wet with dew, a few shipping containers stacked like dominoes. A single warehouse squatted at the center, windowless, its walls lined with humming metal panels. From somewhere inside came a pulse. Steady, mechanical, but with something human in it. It was the sound of a city's heartbeat, amplified and fed back into itself. Cole killed the engine. The silence that followed was worse than the hum. It was the sound of waiting. You ready? He asked. Evan took a shaky breath. No, but let's do it anyway. They climbed down, the ground slick under their boots. Cole popped the trailer latch, and together they hauled out the modified Harmony module. It was heavier than it looked, its copper and brass frame buzzing faintly like a beehive. Luther's wiring glowed a dull orange at the seams. The thing seemed alive and impatient. Cole looked at the device, then at Evan. "Once we power this up, there's no turning back. We'll have maybe 5 minutes before it burns itself out, or us with it." Evan nodded, teeth clenched. "Then let's make it count." They moved across the yard, keeping low, their breath visible in the cold morning. A lone security light flickered overhead. No guards, no cameras that moved. Too quiet. Cole's instincts prickled. "They're not guarding it," he muttered. "They're listening through it." Inside the warehouse, the hum was louder. It wasn't just sound anymore, it was pressure. The air itself seemed to thicken. Rows of crates lined the walls, each marked with Vector Civil's clean logo. In the center stood a steel platform, and on it, a ring of devices identical to the one they carried. The ring pulsed in soft blue waves that rolled outward, spreading like ripples across water. Evan stared. They've already built the array. Cole felt his jaw tighten. Then we give it something it can't handle. They set the module down and connected the wires to Luther's makeshift generator. The machine hummed, then began to glow. A low, molten copper light. The sound that came out was wrong. Notes colliding, frequencies twisting, every pitch in the world arguing with itself. It wasn't noise, it was defiance. The warehouse lights flickered. The blue pulses from the Vector devices began to stutter, their smooth rhythm breaking apart. Evan's laptop screen filled with static, readings spiking in wild waves. "It's working," he shouted. "We're throwing the loop off." The ground shook. Somewhere outside, alarms began to wail, thin and desperate. The hum climbed in pitch, no longer low and patient, but shrill, furious. Cole felt it in his teeth, in the metal of his fillings. From the far end of the warehouse came movement, dark figures spilling out of a side door, the men with tidy smiles. They moved calmly, too calmly, as if the shaking floor was just a minor inconvenience. The lead man lifted a megaphone that didn't belong to any police department. "Shut it down," he called, voice amplified, smooth as ever. "You're interfering with a federal calibration procedure. Walk away, Mr. Bennett." Cole raised his voice over the roar. "I've had enough of people telling me when to walk away." The man sighed audibly through the megaphone. "Then you'll learn the hard way what happens when you sing out of tune." Evan twisted a dial on the module. The copper light flared, filling the warehouse with a searing brilliance. The hum turned inside out, the sound collapsing on itself and blooming again. The Vector devices in the ring began to crackle, small arcs of electricity snapping between them. Sparks rained from the rafters. Cole shouted, "Get down!" The world went white. For a long moment there was no sound, just a strange, vast silence. The kind you hear after thunder when your ears are still ringing. Then, slowly, the sound of rain. Then, when Cole came to, he was lying on his back in the mud outside the warehouse. The dawn sky above him was fractured with smoke and pale light. The building was still standing, but half its roof was gone. The hum was gone too. Completely. The world sounded raw, natural, alive. Evan sat nearby, bleeding from one temple but grinning like a madman. "We did it," he croaked. "The loop's gone." The feedback burned the entire array. Cole pushed himself up, every bone aching. "You sure?" Evan held up the laptop, its screen cracked, but showing one clear reading, no signal detected. Cole let out a slow breath. "I'll take that." From behind the wreckage, the man with the tidy smile appeared limping, his immaculate jacket scorched at the sleeve. He still held the megaphone, though it hung useless now. "Congratulations," he said hoarsely. You've broken a system you didn't understand. Cole stood, chest heaving. Understanding ain't required to do the right thing. The man's eyes were tired, but not afraid. You think you stopped us? You silenced one note in a symphony that's already begun. Evan stood beside Cole, jaw set. Then we'll break every instrument you build. The man smiled, even as smoke drifted behind him. You can't stop progress. You can only delay it. And men like you, men who fight the future, always burn out first. Cole's eyes were steady. Maybe. But we make a hell of a noise before we go. He turned his back and walked toward the truck. The man didn't follow. By the time they reached the edge of the city, the sun had climbed high, golden and cruel. Dallas looked the same, cars moving, people walking. But it sounded different. The air no longer hummed. The silence was imperfect now, full of birds, engines, laughter, life. Evan leaned his head back against the seat. Do you think it's really over? Cole shook his head. No. But for now it's quiet. That's all we ever get. They drove on, the road opening ahead like a fresh sheet of paper. The radio stayed off. The only sound was the steady heartbeat of the Mac and the whisper of tires on asphalt. After a while, Evan asked, "Where to next?" Cole smiled faintly. West, always west. Trouble follows roads that head east. The boy chuckled. You sound like someone in a movie. Cole shrugged. Maybe we are. Long as we keep the reels turning. The highway sign flashed past. Amarillo 320 miles. Beyond that, more country, more sky. Cole pressed the pedal just enough to feel the weight surge. The truck rolled steady and sure, a steel animal moving toward whatever waited out there. More trouble, more silence, maybe even redemption. And somewhere deep inside the trailer, the ruined harmony module gave one last faint buzz before going still forever. The road north shimmered under the late afternoon sun, a ribbon of heat twisting through dry Texas plain. Cole had been driving for hours, his right hand resting on the worn wheel, his left wrapped around a paper cup of truck stop coffee that had long since gone bitter. Evan dozed in the passenger seat, mouth slightly open, his hand still clutching the corner of his map as though it might slide away if he let go. Cole kept his eyes on the horizon. The city was far behind them now, its towers just a smudge of memory. But a driver learns that silence doesn't always mean safety. The Mac's engine hummed low and even, but something beneath it, a faint crackle, a ghost of feedback, had started to whisper through the speakers. Barely there, but there. He flicked the radio off. The whisper stayed. "Evan," Cole said softly. The boy stirred, blinking awake. "We're still moving?" "Yeah, but listen." Evan tilted his head, and for a few seconds there was only the sound of wind slipping through the cracked window. Then he heard it too. A distant hiss, like someone breathing through a long wire. "Please tell me that's just the alternator," he murmured. Cole shook his head. "Alternator's clean. This is something else." The boy straightened, suddenly alert. "It can't be the loop. It's gone. We fried it." "Maybe," Cole said. "But when you burn something that big, sometimes the smoke keeps talking." Evan pulled his laptop from the floor, waking it with a slap of keys. The cracked screen flickered to life, full of data spikes, static noise, and a scrolling line of interference patterns. His fingers danced. "This shouldn't exist," he muttered. "There's no signal source near us." Cole glanced over. No source doesn't mean no echo. Outside, the land rolled open. Pastures, windmills, a scatter of gas stations clinging to the highway. Somewhere beyond the flat horizon, thunderheads gathered like bruises. The day smelled of dust and rain waiting to fall. "You think someone's tracking us?" Evan asked. "I think something's trying to remember us," Cole said. "And I don't like being remembered by machines." Then they reached Amarillo near dusk, where neon signs blinked over half-empty diners and motels that hadn't changed since the 70s. Cole turned the Mac off the main drag, following a narrow road to a truck yard he knew from old routes. A hand-painted sign over the gate read, "Gus's Service and Diesel Repair." No credit, no problems. Gus himself was still there. Same grease-stained coveralls, same beard like a gray waterfall. He looked up as the Mac pulled in, wiping his hands on a rag. "Bennett, you old fool. I thought you'd retired or died." Cole climbed down, smiling, still deciding which comes first. Gus chuckled. "That your rig? Sounds like she's been possessed by a tornado." Cole nodded toward the hood. "She might be. Mind if we park her for the night and run some diagnostics?" "Long as you pay in cash and don't blow up my shop," Gus said. "Got enough ghosts in here already." Inside the garage, the fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered. Evan connected the Mac's onboard system to his laptop while Gus rummaged through a box of tools. The smell of oil and metal filled the air. Evan frowned at the screen. "The interference is localized," he said. "It's feeding through the electrical system, not the radio. It's like the whole truck is acting as an antenna." Gus snorted. "You boys pick up a ghost frequency or something?" Cole leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. "Something like that." Evan kept typing, the data scrolling faster now. "It's not random, though. It's structured, like Morse code, but faster." Cole frowned. "You can translate it?" "Working on it," the boy said. "It's repeating a pattern. 3 tones, pause, then 6 short bursts, over and over." Gus laughed. "Hell, maybe it's just the Department of Transportation trying to tell you to pay your tolls." But Cole's face stayed grave. "No," he said. "That's a call sign." Evan looked up sharply. "You recognize it?" Cole nodded once. "It's the same pattern that played when that voice first came over the CB. The one that sounded like you?" "Yeah," Cole said. "Looks like I've still got company." Upper that night, a storm rolled in. Rain drummed on the metal roof of the garage, thunder crawling along the horizon like slow artillery. The Mac sat quiet, engine cold, but the dashboard lights flickered faintly in rhythm with the storm. Cole sat on an overturned crate, staring at the glow. Evan lay on a cot nearby, pretending to sleep, but listening. "You think that voice, your voice, is still out there?" the boy asked quietly. Cole took a sip from his thermos before answering. "I think whoever built that machine didn't just build hardware. They built a signal with a face on it. Might have used recordings, maybe profiles, maybe memories." "Memories?" Evan echoed. Cole nodded slowly. "They had me on file. Voice prints, routes, logs. Hell, I've been on a dozen federal contracts over the years. Enough data to build a ghost that talks like me." Evan shivered. "So, it's not you? It's a copy." Cole smiled grimly. "A copy that still knows my bad habits. That's the dangerous kind." The rain thickened. The lights flickered again. Evan sat up, watching the glow pulse through the cab window. "Cole," he said softly. "It's getting stronger." Cole stood. The hum was faint, but growing, a familiar vibration crawling up through the floor. He walked to the Mac, pressed a palm against the cold metal of the hood. The truck was alive again, breathing, waiting. Then, from the dead CB inside, a voice, low, static-ridden, but unmistakably his own. "Cole," it said, "you can't run from your own echo. Evan's eyes went wide. Jesus. Quiet, Cole said, leaning closer. You got something to say? Say it. The speaker crackled. You broke one loop, but you're part of another. Every mile you drive, you carry what we built. It's in the steel. In you. Cole felt the words slide under his skin like splinters. You're lying. Am I? The voice said. Check the VIN, driver. That truck's frame was milled from the same composite as the couplers you burned. You're still singing the song. The CB fell silent. Evan backed away, pale. Tell me that's not true. Cole opened the door, rain spattering his shirt, and climbed into the cab. He reached for the flashlight, brushing dust from the metal tag bolted near the pedals. Even through grime and age, the Vector logo gleamed faintly. Evan stared. No. Cole closed his eyes, jaw tight. Looks like we didn't steal just a truck. We stole the last piece of their network. Gus leaned against the doorway, confused but wary. You boys got some explaining to do. Cole turned toward him, rain dripping from his hair. Not tonight. But if you've got a back road out of town, we'll take it. Gus shrugged. Always do. Just make sure whatever you're running from doesn't like barbecue, because that's all Amarillo's got. Where they left before dawn. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and fragile. As they rolled onto the highway, the Mac's engine purred, calm again. But Cole could still feel the faint vibration in the steering wheel, that ghost of a hum buried in the machine's bones. Evan sat quietly, watching the light spread across the plains. If the truck's part of it, he said, then destroying it might finish the job. Cole nodded. Maybe, but that'd be one hell of a funeral. Evan glanced at him. You'd do it? Cole kept his eyes on the road. If it keeps the world quiet for a while, yeah. The boy didn't answer. The wind swept through the open window, carrying the scent of wet earth and diesel. The hum was barely audible now, fading under the rumble of the tires. Ahead, the sun climbed higher, sharp and gold, and for a brief moment the Mac's shadow stretched long across the road, two figures, one man, one boy, and a machine still deciding whether it was friend or ghost. They drove west again, toward the red rock horizon and the promise of another fight. Behind them, the city slept in uneasy silence. Ahead, somewhere past the edge of Texas, a voice was waiting to sing again. And Cole Bennett, trucker, survivor, accidental hero, gripped the wheel a little tighter and muttered into the morning air. Then let it sing. I'll be there to drown it out. The desert opened in front of them like a wound. Dry wind pushed at the Mac's flanks, carrying sand that whispered across the windshield. Cole could feel the vibration still. Faint, deep in the steering column, the way a memory sits in your chest long after it's over. Evan sat beside him, quiet but not sleeping. His eyes were on the horizon, where mesas rose like rusted ships stranded in pale dust. We could ditch it, he said suddenly. Leave the truck here, walk away. Cole didn't answer at first. The highway stretched ahead in two long lanes that cut through the flat country like stitches in old skin. He knew what the boy meant. Leave the Vector steel behind, end the song before it started again. But men like Cole didn't just walk away from their tools. They made peace with them, or they died holding the wheel. Finally, he said, if we walk, they'll find it. They'll dig it up, scrub off our fingerprints, and keep playing their tune. Better it dies with us than gets another encore. Evan stared at him. You're talking about suicide. Cole shook his head. I'm talking about stewardship. The boy slumped back, jaw tight. "You sound like my father." "Then he's smarter than you think," Cole said. "The world's full of men who made the wrong noise once, and then spent the rest of their lives pretending they didn't." By midday, they reached the ghost town of Vega, a scatter of tin roofs and sun-bleached billboards. The gas station was boarded up, but a hand-painted sign still clung to a rusted pole. "Cold sodas. Honest repairs. Prayer welcome." Cole pulled into the shade of the old canopy. The air shimmered around them, so hot it looked alive. Evan climbed out, squinting. "We're out of water, and fuel's low." Cole pointed at a cluster of sheds behind the station. "Check the drums. I'll look at the pump." The boy nodded and jogged off. Cole pried open the pump housing, half expecting snakes. Instead, he found something else. A small metal device wired into the fuel line. Compact, sleek, bearing the same Vector Civil logo burned into the Mac's frame. He felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the wind. "Evan," he shouted, "don't touch anything back there." The boy came running, dust kicking up around his boots. "What is it?" Cole pointed. "They've been here? This isn't a gas station, it's a listening post." Evan crouched beside the pump, studying the device. "It's passive, like the couplers. It probably activates when it hears the right frequency." "Meaning?" "Meaning they don't need to track us. They can just wait for us to talk." Cole swore under his breath. "Then we keep quiet and move fast." He yanked the cables out with one rough pull, then stomped the small black box until it cracked like an eggshell. A faint hum spilled out and died, the air going oddly still. "You think that stops it?" Evan asked. "It stops this one," Cole said. "But if there's one, there's more." The boy hesitated. "Cole, what if that thing was sleeping, not watching? What if we just woke it up?" Cole's hand froze halfway to the door handle. The desert wind had gone still. Too still, like the world was listening. Then, from somewhere behind them, came the unmistakable sound of an engine. Deep, throaty, controlled. Evan turned pale. "They found us." Cole climbed into the cab. "Get in, now." The boy didn't argue. The Mac roared to life, coughing dust and diesel. Cole jammed it into gear and tore out of the lot just as a black SUV crested the hill, sun glaring off its windshield. The chase began. The highway narrowed, fenced by low scrub and dry gulches. Cole kept his eyes on the mirror. The SUV was steady behind them, not gaining, not falling back, just keeping distance like a shark circling blood. Evan clung to the door handle. "They're not shooting." "They don't need to," Cole said. "They want us alive." "For what?" "To make me stop the truck." Evan's voice trembled. "What if they trigger whatever's inside it? Then we don't give them the chance." Cole reached under the seat and pulled out a small steel box, one of Luther Rowe's last gifts. Inside was a radio detonator, its red light blinking faintly. Old Luther wasn't the trusting kind, Cole said. He wired a failsafe into the feedback rig. You push this button, the Mac's heart burns hotter than the sun for about 30 seconds. Evan stared at him. You mean blow it up? Only if I have to. The wind howled across the plain. Lightning flickered on the horizon, the storm returning. Cole felt the pressure change, the air tightening like a held breath. Then, as if the world were taking sides, the hum began again, faint at first, then swelling through the truck's bones. Evan clutched the dash. It's sinking to something. Cole slammed the wheel. Then we outrun the song. He pushed the Mac harder, the engine screaming, tires spitting gravel. The SUV followed, its headlights cutting through dust. "Cole!" Evan shouted. "It's not slowing down." "Neither are we." Ahead, the highway curved toward a bridge, a long, rusted span over a dry riverbed. The kind of bridge you see once and never forget. Cole saw it and knew what he had to do. He reached into his jacket pocket and thumbed the detonator's safety cap open. Evan saw it and went white. "No, you can't." Cole's eyes stayed on the bridge. "We don't have a choice." The hum inside the cab became a roar, shaking glass, shaking bones. The steering wheel fought his hands. The truck was no longer just steel and diesel. It was a living thing, trying to pull toward the signal like a moth to flame. "Cole!" Evan screamed. "You'll kill us." "Better us than everyone else," Cole said softly. He pressed the button. Under the explosion tore the sky. For a second the world went all light. No sound, just pressure, like being inside a giant's heartbeat. The bridge disintegrated into shrapnel and flame. The SUV behind them vanished in a bloom of white fire. The Mac lifted off the ground, weightless, a creature unmade. Cole felt Evan's hand clutch his arm, felt heat on his face, smelled diesel and ozone and something holy. Then everything went black. When he woke, it was night. The desert was quiet. Smoke curled in ghostly ribbons around what was left of the bridge. Twisted beams glowing orange against a purple sky. The Mac lay on its side in the dry riverbed, torn but still whole. Cole crawled out through a broken window, ribs screaming. "Evan!" A cough answered him from nearby. The boy was half buried under debris, alive, his face streaked with blood and dirt. Cole dragged him free, laid him down on the sand. "You're okay," he said. Evan groaned. "Define okay." Cole almost laughed, but it came out a rasp. "We did it. It's gone." The boy blinked up at the stars. "Are you sure?" Cole listened. No hum, no signal, just wind. Just the earth breathing again. "Yeah," he said. "For now." He looked at the Mac, its frame bent, its engine dead, and felt something like gratitude. The ghost was gone, burned out with the rest. Evan turned his head toward him. "So what now?" Cole sat back, staring at the endless desert sky. "Now we walk." "To where?" "Wherever the road starts again," Cole said. "It always does." Far off, lightning flared over the horizon, white and clean. Cole watched it and thought about all the things a man can't leave behind. The miles, the memories, the sound of his own voice calling him home. He helped Evan to his feet, both of them swaying. The air was warm, dry, still. They began walking east, toward the faint glow of a distant town. Behind them, the bridge burned itself out, sparks drifting into darkness. And for the first time in days, there was no hum, only silence that felt earned. The desert at night was a place without mercy, and yet somehow Cole found peace in it. The silence pressed down like a thick blanket, broken only by the rasp of wind dragging over sand and the scrape of their boots. Each step away from the wrecked Mac felt like a heartbeat borrowed from someone else's time. They had been walking for hours. The stars above were sharp and countless, a sky so clear it made the soul feel small. Evan trudged beside him, moving like a shadow half detached from its source. "You ever think," the boy said, his voice cracked from thirst, "that we're just ghosts now? That maybe we burned up back there and this is what comes after?" Cole smiled faintly. "If this is heaven, it's got lousy service." Evan managed a weak laugh, but it died quick. "Seriously, Cole, that blast, what if it did something to us? What if we're still carrying it? Cole didn't answer right away. He'd been thinking the same thing, in his own way. Every few minutes, he could still feel it. A faint vibration in his chest, just below the heart, like the ghost of the hum trying to find its rhythm again. We might be, he said finally. But carrying a thing isn't the same as belonging to it. They walked in silence after that. The moon rose, turning the desert silver. Coyotes howled somewhere far off, their voices bending with the wind. Just before dawn, they reached the edge of a highway, an old 2-lane stretch of cracked asphalt running east toward nowhere in particular. A sign stood half buried in sand. Carrigan, Pop. 217, next gas, 42 miles. Evan dropped onto a rock and rubbed his blistered feet. 217 people, he muttered. Think any of them are awake? Folks like that always are, Cole said. They just hide it better. He squinted eastward. A faint orange glow marked where the town must have been, tucked low behind a ridge. The smell of sage and dust carried on the breeze. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the last thing Luther Rowe had handed him before they left Shreveport, a small tin flask and a folded scrap of paper. Evan raised an eyebrow. What's that? Insurance, Cole said. He unscrewed the cap and took a sip. Warm whiskey, cheap and mean, and then passed it over. The boy hesitated before taking a swallow that made him cough hard enough to bring tears. Cole smiled. That's how you know it's working. He unfolded the paper. On it, in Luther's messy handwriting, were a set of coordinates and a short note. If the hum comes back, find these people. They know what silence costs. Beneath that, a phone number and a single name. Rose Choir. Evan leaned over his shoulder. Rose Choir? Sounds like a band. Maybe it is, Cole said. Or maybe Luther had more friends in low places than he let on. By mid-morning, they reached Carrigan. The town looked like it had been built in a hurry and then forgotten. One main street lined with dusty storefronts, a diner, a post office, a church with a bell that hadn't rung in years. But there was life here. A dog sleeping in the shade, a gas pump ticking lazily, an old man sweeping dust off his porch like it might make a difference. They made their way to the diner, its sign barely hanging on a single rusted chain. The Silver Fork. Inside, the air smelled of bacon grease, coffee, and old stories. A waitress with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Becca, looked up as they came in. You boys look like you wrestled a sandstorm and lost. More or less, Cole said. You still serve coffee that could wake the dead. Best in the county, she said, pouring 2 steaming mugs before they even sat down. Evan wrapped his hands around the cup like it was salvation. Cole took a long sip, closing his eyes. The warmth burned down his throat, grounding him. Becca leaned on the counter. Where you headed? Cole met her gaze. Somewhere quiet. She smiled sadly. Ain't nowhere quiet anymore, honey. Not really. Before he could answer, the diner's old jukebox, silent until that moment, clicked to life. The record arm moved on its own, scratching out a few warped notes before the speakers began to hum. Cole froze. Evan whispered, No. The hum grew louder, the same pitch they'd fought in Dallas. Coffee cups rattled on the counter. The waitress looked around, confused. What on earth? Get outside, Cole said sharply. Becca blinked. Excuse me? Now. He and Evan were already moving, shoving through the door as the hum spiked. The air outside shimmered, bending like heat on asphalt. Every electrical wire along Main Street began to buzz. Streetlights flickered in perfect rhythm. They can't be alive. Evan gasped. "We killed the network." Cole's eyes swept the rooftops. Not all of it. Maybe just enough for one more echo. From the diner behind them came a sudden crash as the jukebox exploded in a burst of sparks, glass flying like shrapnel. The hum cut off. Then the silence returned, heavier this time, full of something watching. Cole's hand went to the inside of his jacket. The folded paper crinkled under his fingers. Rose Choir. He pulled out his phone, the screen cracked, battery nearly gone. With a few slow keystrokes, he dialed the number. It rang once, twice, then a click. A woman's voice answered, calm, low, deliberate. "You found us." Cole blinked. "Who is this?" "You're Luther's friend," the voice said. "He told us if the song ever came back, we'd hear from you." Evan leaned closer, whispering, "Ask where they are." Cole did. The voice gave coordinates. North, not far, maybe 20 miles. "There's a grain elevator by an old rail spur," she said. "You'll see a blue flag on the door. Bring whoever's with you, but hurry, the static's spreading again." Before Cole could answer, the line went dead. He pocketed the phone. "We're not done yet," he said. Evan groaned. "We just blew up a bridge, Cole." "Yeah," Cole said, finishing his coffee with one long swallow. "Guess we'll have to build a new one." They left Carrigan under a sky smeared with gray clouds. The road north wound through stretches of empty wheat fields, the stalks dry and whispering. Cole felt the hum again, not through the truck, but in the air itself, faint and far away, like thunder a long way off. Evan walked a few steps behind, every so often glancing back at the silent town. "You think the people there heard it?" "They heard something," Cole said. "They just don't have words for it yet." As they crested a hill, they saw it. A grain elevator standing alone at the edge of the horizon, its concrete walls scarred by time. A blue flag fluttered from the highest window. Cole smiled faintly. "Looks like the choir's waiting." They started down the slope toward it, the wind kicking dust around their boots. Behind them, the sky deepened to the color of old iron. Somewhere in the distance, faint and low, the hum began again. Softer now, uncertain, like a machine remembering how to breathe. Cole didn't look back. "Come on, kid," he said. "Let's see what song they're singing." The grain elevator loomed against the horizon like an abandoned fortress. Its faded paint peeled in long strips, and the rusted conveyor belts still whispered when the wind passed through them. The blue flag hung from a window halfway up, snapping sharply in the gusts, a color too bright for the dead gray sky. Cole and Evan stopped at the base of the structure. Their boots sank slightly into the dust and crushed wheat chaff. The faint hum followed them up the dirt road, not loud enough to hurt, just enough to make the back of Cole's neck prickle. Evan looked up at the tower. "You think this is really them?" "I've learned not to trust signs," Cole said. "But Luther trusted these people. That's good enough for me." He rapped on the metal door with his knuckles. It echoed hollowly. After a few seconds, a sliding bolt clanked, and a woman appeared in the doorway. She was about 40 with cropped hair, work gloves, and a gaze that measured both of them before she spoke. "You're the trucker," she said. "Luther told us if you ever called, it meant the loop wasn't dead." Cole nodded. "It's not. We killed the main network, but the echoes are still alive, in the machines, the steel, the wires. Something keeps trying to remember its own song." The woman stepped aside. "Then you came to the right place." Inside, the grain elevator had been converted into a kind of workshop, not unlike Luther Rose, but larger, more methodical. The old bins were filled with racks of salvaged equipment: radio transmitters, analog amplifiers, copper coils. At the center stood a makeshift altar of sorts, a stack of wooden crates covered by tarps and rigged with microphones and old speaker cones. Around it worked 6 people, men and women of all ages, each focused on a different piece of the strange machinery. The hum in the air was faint, but it seemed to pulse from the heart of the elevator itself, like the building was breathing. "This is Rose's choir," the woman said. "We're the ones who stayed behind after he left the program. He told us the government would try to use resonance to control behavior. They called it social harmonics. We called it blasphemy." Evan's eyes widened. "You're saying this was a government project?" The woman gave a small, bitter smile. "A private one that borrowed the government's flag. Luther sabotaged the final prototype and ran. We've been cleaning up after him ever since." Cole crossed his arms. "We just burned one of their major installations. Whatever's left of them won't stay quiet long." "We know," she said. "That's why we've been building this." She pulled back a tarp, revealing a console bristling with dials and old vacuum tubes glowing faintly orange. Wires ran from it up the walls and into the ceiling, where they vanished into a web of antennas. Evan stepped closer. "What is it?" "A countersong," the woman said. "If their network uses resonance to sync, we use dissonance to scatter. Think of it as a firewall made of chaos. It keeps the system too busy arguing with itself to take orders." Cole let out a slow whistle. "And you can actually use this thing?" "We can," she said, "but we need power and range. The antennas here won't reach far enough. We need a transmitter strong enough to hit every repeater between here and the city." Cole thought for a moment, then smiled grimly. "There's a decommissioned radio tower 10 miles east of here. Big one, still has the generators. I hauled a load there once for a movie set. You feed your countersong through that, you'll reach half the state." The woman's eyes brightened. "You can get us there?" "Truck's dead," Cole said. "But I know how to drive anything with wheels. You've got a rig?" She nodded. "Old military hauler out back. It still runs, but it's not subtle." Cole grinned. "I'm not in the mood for subtle." Then the rig was a beast. A 6-wheel surplus truck painted matte black, engine coughing like an old smoker. They loaded the countersong equipment onto the flatbed and strapped it down with chain and prayer. The rest of the choir followed in a rusted pickup, carrying spools of wire, batteries, and a generator that looked like it had survived 3 wars. As the convoy rolled out, Evan sat beside Cole in the cab, the wind howling through the cracked window. "Feels weird," he said, driving back toward it. Cole nodded. "That's how you know it's worth it." The highway stretched ahead, empty and gray. In the distance, lightning flickered, faint veins of white crawling across the clouds. The hum in the air was back, building slowly as though the world itself had started tuning again. They reached the tower just after dusk. It rose 300 feet into the sky, a spindly silhouette against the bruised clouds. The wind howled through its lattice frame, carrying static like whispers. The choir went to work fast. Wires uncoiled across the ground, clamps snapped, and the generator's low growl filled the night. Evan helped the woman, whose name, he learned, was May Stanton, align the transmitters while Cole climbed halfway up the tower to check the old dish mount. From up high, he could see the land stretching flat and endless, dotted with a few far-off lights, farmhouses maybe, or something else. And beneath it all, the hum was louder now, throbbing through the metal under his hands. May, he shouted down. They're broadcasting again. She looked up. Then we'd better sing first. They powered up the counter song. The generator roared. The equipment on the truck lit up in pulses of orange and blue. Evan watched the gauges climb. We're peaking already. Hold it steady, May said. We need to match their frequency before we break it. Cole climbed down, wiping sweat from his face. You've got about a minute before they find us. May twisted a dial. Good. That's about all the time we need. The air began to vibrate. The hum was deafening now, but layered. 2 notes, one rising, one falling, crashing into each other like waves. The tower shook. The sky seemed to tear open. Evan shouted over the noise. It's working! The harmonics are collapsing. Then, from somewhere far off, headlights appeared, a column of black SUVs racing across the plain, lights flashing in the dark. Cole's stomach tightened. They're coming fast, he yelled. May's eyes were fixed on the dials. We can't stop now. Cole looked at Evan. Get ready to run. What about you? I'll buy you time. He grabbed a crowbar from the truck and moved toward the road, where the hum made the ground tremble. The first SUV crested the rise. The same man with the tidy smile stepped out, unruffled, his hair whipped by the wind. He looked at Cole like he was seeing an old acquaintance at a funeral. You really don't learn, the man said. You think you can drown progress with static? Cole tightened his grip on the crowbar. Not drown it, he said. Just make it choke. Behind him, May threw the last switch. The counter song hit full power. The world split. A wall of sound rolled outward, not a single tone, but 1,000, clashing, crashing, dissolving. The ground quivered. The air rippled like boiling glass. The black SUVs spun out, engines dying mid-rev. The men inside clutched their heads, their tidy smiles finally breaking. Cole fell to his knees, the crowbar vibrating in his hands. The noise was everything. Every note ever played, every word ever whispered, every scream, every prayer. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Silence. Real silence. Cole opened his eyes. The tower still stood, its steel glinting faintly under the stars. The trucks were still. The choir was safe. Evan was alive, face streaked with tears and dust. May's voice came softly from beside the generator. It's done. Cole nodded, throat tight. It's done. Found it by dawn, the world felt different. The hum was gone, replaced by the low, forgiving sounds of wind and distant birds. The choir packed their gear in silence, reverent as priests after a long sermon. Evan stood beside Cole, staring at the sunrise. So that's it? For now, Cole said. Someone will try again. Someone always does. But maybe next time people will listen before they sing. May walked over, brushing dust from her sleeves. We'll stay here, she said. Keep the tower alive. Keep the silence honest. Cole nodded. Good. You've got the right kind of choir for it. He looked east, where the road shimmered in morning light. We should go, he said to Evan. Can't stay still too long. The boy smiled faintly. Where to this time? Cole chuckled. Wherever the noise starts up again. They climbed into the pickup one of the choir offered them and rolled down the dirt road. Behind them, the tower stood tall against the rising sun, a sentinel of quiet. As the miles passed, Evan leaned his head back and said softly, Do you think Luther would have been proud? Cole smiled. He'd have said we played it too loud. Then he'd have poured a drink. Evan laughed. So, what now? Cole looked ahead at the endless stretch of road. Now we drive, kid, and we listen. The world's full of songs worth keeping, and a few worth killing. The pickup's tires hummed over the asphalt, soft and steady, carrying them toward whatever waited beyond the horizon. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel like something missing. It felt like peace. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support inspires new stories to be told.